We need a name for the podcast, and I was thinking we could go with something just kind of completely innocuous in that, and I was just thinking like that one sports podcast,
Yeah,
just something
yeah, I
simple.
like it.
That one sports podcast.
If
Hey,
if
you listen to
something
that
comes
sports?
to me,
You listen to that podcast? Which podcast? That sports podcast. What sports podcast?
uh,
That sports podcast. Oh,
yeah,
you mean that sports podcast? Yeah, I'd watch that. I'd listen to it. It's pretty cool.
yeah. Pretty soon, people will be like, "It's that sports podcast."
Exactly.
So, emphasis on it.
Exactly.
So, we got some work to do first before we do that. And
All right. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of our sports podcast. The name you ask? That sports podcast. I'm Brandon. This is Anthony. Thanks for watching. Um, Tonight, we are going to talk about the Olympics and then some good stuff. So, Anthony, if you want to go on ahead and kick this off for us.
yes, thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me again, and welcome everybody to that sports podcast tonight. I want to kick it off with the USA women's ice hockey team, which is over in Beijing at the Winter Olympics.
Weren't they just
Big
over
vic-
there dogging somebody?
Yeah,
They went.
yeah,
They were over
man.
there just dogging the shit out of somebody.
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned that Canada won their game 12-1.
Yeah, Canada.
But
Canada was really on fire. Whoo, 12 in hockey too, man.
yeah.
Whew.
Then Canada went back today and won 11-1. So
Canada is up there putting in work. Them Canadian women say they represent. Hey, we
yeah.
see you ladies, 11 and 12. Dang.
Well, for sure. And the U.S. women are playing pretty good too. Okay, so we had a 5-2 win yesterday, and this morning over the Russian Olympic Committee, it was like 5-1. So very good. 2 games right here. They have a veteran team. They have a good mix. They won the gold at the 2018 Olympics. So, they started out pretty solid here. Now, Canada looks incredible right now. So it's going to be very tough to beat them, Brandon.
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, they're putting up 11 and 12 points a game. You're going to have to bring a
Yeah.
lot of heavy firepower to combat that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just, that's, yeah, that's a mighty hurdle to overcome. I mean, I hope the Canadians win it. Honestly, I mean, I'm all
Yeah.
for Americans winning stuff, but the Canadians seem like they're just on a roll right now, and I'm hoping they go through. Let's keep
You know,
success.
yeah. I mean, I think, I was a hockey coach, so I have a little insight in this. And, I think if you're the US and, you're preparing to play a juggernaut offense like that, you have to have all the details down. You have to forecheck hard. You have to get in there, hustle, and make life difficult for them. Because if you just you know play how you usually play, it's not going to work. So that's yep.
Yeah, that's definitely a solid point there. I mean, in any sport, really, when you have a powerhouse of an offense, you can't just let them dominate and dictate the terms on on the offense. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you have to play really tough defense. You have to do those little nitty gritty things and get in there and work hard and grit out a win, because an offense like that can quickly run away with the game in any sport, really.
absolutely. But with regards, it's almost like what happened to Tampa Bay and Tom Brady against the Rams, right?
Hmm.
So the Rams, they played nitty gritty. I mean, they knew that they probably didn't have as much firepower offensively as one of the top most built up offenses in the league. But hey, they rushed the passer. They made life as difficult as can be for the greatest quarterback of all time, and they were able to win the game.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, so let's move on to the NFL. We're not going to necessarily talk about any of the gameplay tonight. We've got more of a business mind here that we're talking about. Brian Flores is suing the NFL. We've all heard the reports about that. There's allegations that there may be some racial biases in there and everything like that. Anthony, why don't you go ahead and share your thoughts about the whole situation?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation where Brian Flores was denied another coaching job by the Giants. He was fired by the Dolphins after going 7-9 this year, and I think it's important to note that he had a very good win in his last game of the season. He beat Bill Belichick and the Patriots. So, this is not an incompetent head coach. I mean, he went 10-6 in 2020. It's a very good season, especially with what you're working with that Dolphins team. So I think, here's the deal. He's decided to go ahead with a lawsuit against the league, claiming that he's been given sham interviews by NFL teams like the Giants and the Broncos in the past, and claiming that the Rooney Rule doesn't work. The Rooney Rule, which was started in 2003 to demand that all NFL teams look into hiring at least, one ethnic minority, racial minority coach in the hiring process. And, he's claiming that that's really not enough and that, black head coaches in the NFL just don't get a fair shake. So I think the interesting part for me is that he's going ahead with this lawsuit, even though it may impact his ability to get a job in the future. And he was a decent head coach. So Brandon, what do you think about, what this does for Brian Flores in the future?
Well, I mean, that's overall, I feel like he has a lawsuit. It's just not one with any sort of racial bias. You know what I mean? Like as far as claiming racism, everybody's pointing out the fact that the NFL is made up of 70% black athletes, right? So why do people keep bringing that up? Oh, well, because they're not represented in the coaches. And I'm like, but they are represented in the coaches. There's offensive coordinators, there's head defensive coordinators, there's quarterback coaches, wide receivers, there's all these other position coaches out there that are African American and stuff like that. Like, so where are we? What do we do to balance the scale? So what are we saying that all like out of 32 NFL teams, 70% of them have to be black head coaches? So that means that white people just don't get an opportunity to coach, or no other minority gets an opportunity to coach. Like, why do people keep bringing that up as if it's not, as if there has to be some direct reflection, right? And then on top of that, it's hard to prove that anybody's being racist against somebody because they had him in the interview. There's the Rooney Rule. They put that rule in place so that way there is at least one guaranteed racial minority person going into these interviews, right? So that's the Rooney Rule is technically working because now these black coaches are actually these black coaches, Hispanic coaches, minority coaches, whatever you want to, Asian coaches, whoever, they're getting their opportunity to go in there and do what they do. Right now, on the flip side of that, no matter how many head coaches there are or are not, there's still only 32 teams. It's a very competitive platform we're talking about. We're not talking about, like the NCAA where there's the D1, D2, D3, and there's all these different schools and conferences and stuff like that to coach for and stuff. Now, if he was out there saying that he couldn't get a head coaching job nowhere, he tried everywhere, right? Then I could say he has a little bit more of a case, but you're talking about one head coaching position out of 32. And to put that in perspective, how many other coaches are applying for these same jobs? We don't hear about all the other coaches who got slighted. And in this one specific instance with the Giants, we can say that, yeah, he was denied a job because it was a sham interview simply because the Giants seemingly had made up their mind about who they wanted to hire. Why? Because the Bills GM gave the offensive coordinator from over there the in, right? Like, we can say there was an implicit bias. They weren't planning on hiring anybody else but him. He was their guy. He was the one they wanted. They knew they were going with him. That's why the decision was so quick. Right. Now we can say that there was some sort of bias there and be like, he wasn't given a fair shake in the opportunity, and that needs to be looked at. But to say that there was some sort of implicit racial bias in black coaches, I mean, Romeo Crennel was with the Bengals for a long time. Even through a lot of the times they had their highs and their lows. They were in the playoffs, but you can guarantee that they weren't going very far. They were knocked out very early in the playoffs, almost every time that they made it. And Romeo Crennel was still out there. Mike Tomlin's been out in Pittsburgh for forever. So I mean, like, how can we sit here and say that if there's implicit race or bias there if I'm seeing other coaches thrive in other positions and stuff like that, right? Like, I feel like there's enough representation. Ron Rivera's out there. I mean, It takes time for these things to balance out. But do I believe that you'll ever see 50% of the coaches being black and stuff like that? Like, I don't think so. I think you'll start seeing more black coaches in the future and stuff like that when there's more opportunities. And then on top of that, Brian Flores could still get the Texans head coaching job. I heard that
Yeah.
was still open for him. So I mean, like, there's still opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, one point that I was thinking about there was that, listen, Mike Tomlin's like the only one. So, I mean, I understand that it takes time, but right now he's the only one. And, what if he's been allowed to stay there, all these years? I mean, he's been a good coach, don't get me wrong. So that's a reason why he's allowed to stay there. But I don't know. I just think like you need to spread out the black head coaches a little bit more. I mean, like there's only one, and he's got a rosy position with the Steelers. Like they're a good team. He's got a good quarterback. Why aren't black head coaches or qualified black individuals getting the opportunity, across the board? So like, why didn't the Giants interview two black head coaching candidates as
How
opposed
do
to
we
one?
know that they didn't? How do we don't know
I
everybody
know
that
who I know who they interviewed.
interviewed. Who do they
Yeah,
interview?
I mean, they interviewed a guy named Anna Rumo, who was like a coach, some kind of coach. Um, they interviewed Dable. They interviewed Flores, and there's definitely like maybe even two more guys that I'm trying to think of. Definitely. Oh, Leslie Frazier, the Bills, the defensive coordinator.
And he's a black guy, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they did interview two black guys.
They did. They did. Fair enough. I thought that they didn't, maybe because I thought out of five, they
I
didn't.
mean, but
Okay.
you're still talking about one job out of 32. There's 32 offensive coordinators, 32 head coaches, 32 every those positions. That's not that many. And how many people are fighting for those same jobs? Let's just
No, five guys.
take Brian Flores out of the equation, right? Let's say that Brian Flores and Leslie Frazier weren't even considered. They didn't even want the fucking job. They were out, interviewing somewhere else, right? So let's say that the pool of applicants is nothing but white guys, right? Including the Bills offensive coordinator, Dave Bobdell, whatever his name is, right? So let's just say that it's him and he gets hired, just like this whole situation plays out. Is it still racist?
No.
Why now? So then why are we throwing Brian Flores back in there? And now we throw Brian Flores back in there and all of a sudden it's racist? I'm saying that there was a funky hiring process. Like, I don't believe that the Bills GM should have been able to interview anyone from the Bills organization. They should not have been considering. I believe that that's a party foul because there's an implicit bias there. There's a connection that eliminates all these other people from being in contention. Even if they really were considering these other guys and stuff like that, and it was a real close vote and everything, they still ended up looking like they did something shady.
Yes, I agree with that. That's one loophole that I think Flores could be attacking with the Giants right now. But it does look bad, right? It looks like, hey, I mean, here I interviewed five guys for the head coaching job, and two of them came from the team I just came from. So, yeah, I mean, do I expect that he's going to try and hire somebody who's got a relationship with? Yeah, that impacted it. Brian Dable's absolutely. They were together for the last 4 years, and they had success. So, there's that other side to that, right? Where I could point out, or you could point out that he went after guys for the head coaching job who he knew and who he had experience with, who came from his team. But it seems like a legitimate reason to hire a head coach as well. So
yeah, I mean, but again, like I said, that's the argument that's going to be made, right? And now you're going to have to prove. So now they're going to have to prove that it's implicitly racial, that there was some racial aspect to it, and that's hard to do on unless something is done overtly. It's hard to prove racism unless you catch somebody on camera saying the N-word on videotape, recorded, whatever, saying the N-word, people don't really believe it when they say he said the N-word. Did you hear that? And people are like, I didn't hear him say it. If nobody heard him say it, then he said that for real. Like maybe he didn't say that. Maybe you just heard wrong. You know what I mean? People
Yeah,
are willing to give people the benefit of the doubt.
but I'll bring up another situation with John Gruden. Here's a guy who was in the NFL for decades as a head coach. And here's a guy who, unbeknownst to everybody, is sending rude emails around, talking about a black executive in the NFL and using, I would say he was making fun of him. That's for certain. And he was, it's pretty clear that he didn't have a lot of respect for him. He was making fun of him. Whoever he used racial epithets to describe, I believe the guy's name is DeMaurice Smith, the executive. We don't know because I didn't look at the emails, but listen, here's a guy who's an established NFL head coach and he's acting badly behind the scenes. So, hopefully that definitely hammers home the need for us to hold everybody accountable, no matter, what position of power you're in. So that's what I want to say about that. And I think that it also comes off as, we have an issue with head coaches, established, maybe owners too, who have some racism in them and it needs to be gotten out.
I mean, here's the thing with that. Like, do I think John Gruden is just a racist? I think he grew up during a time when people were racially insensitive and it was like not politically correct. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that he doesn't talk like a racist behind closed doors and doesn't sound like a racist behind closed doors and stuff like that. But like, do I believe that he believes that black and white people shouldn't mingle around and they shouldn't hang out and stuff like that? I don't necessarily know because there's nothing to me that would make me feel like he was that kind of a human being. How do you coach football for that long? How do you be around? You know what I'm saying? Like if he's that much of a racist, I can't believe it. I can't buy it. He might talk like that because there are a lot of white people who talk like that behind closed doors. And they only talk about like that to people who they were comfortable with. So those emails that he sent to, those people who he was sending those emails to should be held accountable as well. Because I can guarantee you, it wasn't the first time he said some stuff like that, and it wasn't the last time he said some stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like he felt comfortable enough with those gentlemen that he was exchanging those emails with to be talking about it. Now, do I believe that there's an implicit racial bias in the NFL? No. Look how, if it was, there would not be a players union that's comprised of 70% black people. And I believe the NFL players union is headed by a black man. And they say that they have a hard time giving black people, a position of power. These people can demand 50% of the revenue. That's what they've done. They go to arbitration over all this stuff to make sure that they're getting their just desserts and they're fairly compensated and stuff like that. They're offensive coordinators, coaches, scouts. They're all working together. The simple truth of the matter is that it takes a lot to get to the top. And some of these guys are getting to the top simply because they know somebody. Fucking Joe Judge did not get that Giants job without knowing somebody who could get him the interview and vouch for him. Right? Like they didn't just decide out of nowhere, we're going to pick the special teams coach.
Well, I mean, you'd have to prove who he knew, but I mean, listen, I mean,
he knew Belichick, dude. He worked with Belichick.
What's that have to
all
do?
Belichick had to do was all he had to do was say, "Hey, Bill, I want to interview for the Giants head coaching job. You think you could give me an interview?" And then Bill says, "Yeah, I'll get you an interview." You get what I'm saying?
Belichick is coaching the Patriots. He's not coaching the Giants. I mean, he used to be there, but as far as Dave Gettleman reaching out to Judge,
how long why would he not give one of his coaches on his coaching staff a phone call, a reference? Hey man, I heard you're looking for a head coach. My man over here said he's interested in stuff like that. You don't think that that's what these coaches are doing? They're calling up their friends and going, "Hey, do you think you could get me an interview with the Giants head coach? I applied and everything like that. I want the job. Let me see if I can get it. Can you get me in front of them for an interview?" You don't think at the very least that is happening?
No, they refer them if they ask about them. So Gettleman's choice, it's his choice who to reach out to. And then he'll ask Bill Belichick, "What do you think about this guy?" Of course, are you saying Bill Belichick reached out to the Giants offering up his special teams guy? That's different.
I'm not saying he offered him up. I'm saying that he went to Bill Belichick and was like, "Hey, Bill, do you think you could get me a interview over there? I put my application in. I talked to him and stuff like that. Do you think you can sit him down and say, hey, can you give me a reference? Can you give me a referral?" It takes nothing for them to send a text message. How did Bill Belichick texted Brian Flores? They have relationships. It proves it. He texted him to say, congrats on the Giants job. That's how this whole thing got kicked off in the first place. He fucked up texting him and he misread the text message from the original guy that he sent it or whatever. These guys have
I don't get that.
relationships.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. I just think that to say like, Dave Gettleman was interested in Judge from the beginning or whatever. I don't. Maybe that's not what you're saying, but
No, I'm not saying Gettleman was interested. I'm saying
yeah,
that he came out of nowhere. I'm saying that all of us, it just takes somebody to make a phone call and make a suggestion. Hey, can you
yeah,
interview my man from down here and stuff like that? I don't necessarily know that it was Belichick. It could have been
yeah,
another coach from another team or somebody else who worked with him in the past. Could have been another head coach.
for
Could have been
sure.
somebody that he's friends with on the side.
Now, what do you make of the Belichick text? I mean, he's just congratulating him, but like, damn, that's a bad mistake to make. I mean, like the guy's interviewing for the same job, and you're just because they're both Brian's, you text Flores, and like I don't understand it honestly. Like, come on, man. Like, I know he's an older gentleman, but just like I could see how that really pissed off Flores, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would feel slighted if I was Flores, right? My lawsuit would be wrongful termination by the Dolphins and a sham hiring process because the Giants had no interest in hiring any other coach but the Bills, but the guy from the Bills. That's what
There
I
you
would be
go.
alleging. I could prove that shit. I
Yeah,
can't prove that they were sitting back there sending racist texts and emails saying we're not hiring that N-word because we don't like him and stuff like that, right? Like, I can't imagine that that's what's going on. I can't imagine that the entire league is just colluding against all these guys. What I'm saying is that in order to make it balanced for minorities, you have to make it balanced for everybody. Nobody can be excluded from the process.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But like making sure that you interview not just one. If there's qualified African American coaches out there. There's Eric Bieniemy. There's Brian Flores. There's Leslie Frazier. You should. I mean, not for the sake of satisfying the Rooney Rule, but listen, I think Eric Bieniemy was more qualified than probably Leslie Frazier
I'll agree with
uh,
that.
and Dable,
I would
right?
agree with that too.
I
I
actually,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I said that like from the beginning. I was like, I want this guy to coach the team because, it would be difficult to get him away from the Chiefs, but they should try and get him.
I've never. I'm not. I didn't say. I never said that I was a fan of the Giants' new head coaching pick.
Okay.
When
No, you
I
didn't.
heard the pick, when I heard who it was, I was like, why would they pick that guy? There are probably 5 or 6 other head coaches more qualified than that guy. Why that guy? And then all of a sudden you think about it, you put 2 seconds of thought into it and you realize it's because of the Bills GM.
Yeah. I
The only
mean,
logical thing that makes any sense.
yeah. I also looked up that Dable's offenses were ranked second in points for in 2020 and third in 2021. So he has been very good, and I hope that translates. But let's be honest, he ain't working with Josh Allen over here.
No, he's running with Mr. Falls 10 yards short. That's who he's working
Yeah.
with. Oh yeah, it's so what do you think? So obviously we were getting into the talking of the coaching picks and stuff like that, right? So, the GM, the new head coach and everything. How do you going forward, they believe that they're going to, revive Daniel Jones's career. They're going to rehabilitate him and turn him into some sort of magic quarterback. Do you think that is the move for them?
Well, they said Schoen, pronounced Shane, Joe Shane, said that at the first press conference. He said it wasn't super convincing. He said, we're going to find out what Daniel Jones does best, as if he does something very well, which, right? So, I mean, the guy doesn't, I mean, he's a quarterback in the NFL. He can't throw downfield. I mean, it's just, I don't, he rushes. He should be a running back. Um, so, so the point is that, Joe Shane basically answered the question diplomatically and said, we're gonna try and put the best team around Daniel. We're gonna support him, and hopefully everything works out. Well, I could tell you that for 2 or 3 years that Daniel Jones has been here, it's been a disaster. So, am I confident that Daniel Jones is going to be the guy going forward? No, Brandon, I'm not.
Yeah, when I first read the reports that Mara said that the Giants ruined him and this, that, and the third. No, Daniel Jones was a subpar quarterback to begin with. They got a dud. You know, there was nothing they were going to do to make him any better than he already is, right? Like I believe he might improve just a little bit more, but he's still a backup at the end of the day. And I didn't see the press conference, but I don't believe that they believe that Daniel Jones is their quarterback going forward. I think that they said it diplomatically, like you said, giving that answer just because they need him to play for him right now because they don't know what their move is. They're probably exploring options, maybe make some trades or, see if they can make a trade or something like that. Maybe they move Saquon Barkley. You know what I mean? I know that would be really bold of them and stuff, but maybe they move him. He's been hurt the last couple seasons and everything like that. He hasn't run the ball as effectively, and we can't really say whose fault it is, but maybe it would be the shakeup he needs to re-energize his career, and maybe that frees up some space or gives them a pick that they can bring somebody else in, and maybe put some more weapons around Daniel Jones and really give him a go. Maybe even an offensive lineman or two. You know what I'm saying? Like rebuild a little bit and give him some people, keep him from having to do some of that crazy scrambling and stuff. I mean, I don't know, but I just know that if there's an opportunity to get a better quarterback, they're going to take it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many great quarterbacks are going to be in the first round of this draft. That's my question, and we'll obviously be looking forward. The Giants have the fifth and the seventh overall picks in the first round of the 22 NFL draft, which will be coming up in April. So it's a big draft for first year GM Joe Schoen.
Yeah. So according to the reports, there might be some flirting between Aaron Rodgers and the Titans. What do you think of that pit? What do you think about that matchup?
Yeah, that's hot, man. That's cool. I mean, I think basically, the Titans need a better quarterback. Ryan Tannehill has probably just cut it during the regular season. And let's be honest, I mean, they were like 12-5 with the extra game this regular season, right? So, that was still good enough. I think they were the top seed in the AFC. So, I mean, Tannehill's cutting it because the record was good this year, but do I think that he could win in the playoffs in a really tough game? I'm not sure about that. And, I think we saw that this year where the Titans were knocked out. So, if they get Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that's a huge boost. I mean, just imagine, I mean, frankly, I think that it would take a lot away from what Derrick Henry does best, obviously. As a running back, it would sort of be challenging to have a great running back and somebody who is probably a future Hall of Fame quarterback. So, I mean, it's interesting to say the least, Brandon. Where do you stand on it?
I think it's an interesting combination simply because the Titans are great because they're a gritty team on both sides of the ball. Derrick Henry runs like a grown man runs a football, and their defense plays tough smash mouth football. They're in your face, they play physically and stuff like that. And like you said, but Ryan Tannehill is their Achilles heel. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the games that they've lost or came close, or what I mean, like we can trace some of those woes to him not performing that well. And at the end of the day, do I think it'll be a good match? It could be, but my concern would be Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old, right? And how many of those little dings and those little nicks are going to add up at the end of the season and take away from his performance? How do we know that that's not what affected his performance this offseason, this past playoff season? You know what I mean? Your body starts to absorb and collectively take all that damage and stuff like that over the years, and it's like you don't heal as fast. Those things that took, 2, 3 weeks to heal, those little aches and pains that took 2, 3 weeks to heal are now taking 6 weeks to heal. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
so how does he hold up going into next season? I mean, I could easily see him getting hit one time and then being out. You know what I mean? For an
Oof.
extended period of time. And then what do? They hedge their bets on Aaron Rodgers coming in to take them to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like that's a gamble. I think they have enough right now to just stay with Tannehill. I mean, because part of Tannehill's reason, the part of reasons Tannehill's successful there is because he has Derrick Henry to take some of the burden off of his shoulders. He just turns around and hands the ball off, and that opens up the passing lanes. So it's like that's what they have, and they've had a lot of success with it, all the way to the number one seed and make it to the playoffs and stuff like that. Like, yeah, they came up a little bit short, but that doesn't mean that they can't keep coming up a little bit short in the playoffs in the interim until they find that quarterback. I mean, I don't think that they necessarily need to pull the trigger on an Aaron Rodgers thing. I mean, with the media circus that's around him and stuff like that. I mean, his attitude. I mean, just the disdain that he had for the Packers and the animosity, and he did it publicly as well. So it's like all of that kind of circusy attitude. I don't think that jives well with what the Tennessee Titans have going on down there.
Yeah, Coach Vrabel, seems like, obviously comes from the Patriots, playing there as a on the defense there, I believe, a linebacker. He was coached by the greatest coach of all time. He, obviously knows a few things. And does he want Aaron Rodgers coming in there? And we all know that Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay has been like a second coach on that team. He's always butting heads with the head coach. This year was a little bit, I mean, there was a lot being talked about with Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know if it was as much like LaFleur, the head coach, and him butting heads, was it?
I don't necessarily know. I don't know. I don't know. There was nothing concrete. There was just always some vagueness with
Yeah.
animosity towards the team or the situation in general. He held out didn't he hold out the first part of during the offseason or something about like say he wasn't going to play or something like that. There was some sort of tension between them in the offseason before even starting the season and everything. And then, like the lying about the COVID vaccination status and stuff like that. I mean, it just does that aspect of him doesn't seem to jive well. You know what I mean? Like Mike Vrabel, it seems like a no nonsense guy. Those guys get out there and they play football. They're not about the distractions. They're not about all that other stuff. And Derrick Henry's that same kind of guy too. He carries that personality too. So how is his personality going to match up with Aaron Rodgers out there? With Aaron Rodgers saying all that stuff and showing all this animosity towards the team, and if the situation doesn't go well, you know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't think that honestly it's going to work well. I mean, you think about, bringing in like a big. He's not really a big personality, but he is in a way. He's not like To or somebody like that who's like
he's influential.
Right. Yeah, he's established a great quarterback who's going to demand certain things, autonomy in terms of the play calling and personnel, like he has in Green Bay. He has, he's been very involved there. I believe there was a story going into the season that was part of the issues, is that, he would like to be able to pick who he's playing with a bit more. I'm pretty sure I saw a story on that. And I think that, it makes sense. Somebody who has established an NFL career, he's a guy who's looking for that second Super Bowl. He wants to be put in the best situation to get that second Super Bowl. That's what Aaron Rodgers wants right now. And honestly, going to the Titans seems like it would be one of the best places to do that, because they have the defense, they have a running back. Clearly, they have a decent offensive line, or else Tannehill would be getting sacked 10 times a game, right? So you've got all the pieces there. So that's why this is a great story that you brought up.
Yeah, I mean, it is. If they're, like I said, they have enough. I believe they have enough right now to win it all. I do. The only thing is they got to make sure that everybody stays healthy. There's no injuries. I mean, Julio Jones wasn't always healthy throughout the season and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Derrick Henry only got healthy in the later half, and like late because they were in the playoffs and everything like that. He was able to come back, and he just didn't look the same when he was in that game. He wasn't a factor. He wasn't playing up to 100%. And maybe it was because he came back too early. You know what I mean? He didn't get enough reps. He wasn't out there. It takes a lot out of you to be out of the game and then just be inserted back into it after an injury like that, especially when you can't work out, you can't get contact, you can't, you know what I mean? You kind of got to work your way back in there. And so, that played a big factor into it. But I do believe that they could potentially win a Super Bowl with that team. I thought they could have gone to the Super Bowl with that team, and I still
Yeah,
do. I
me
still
too.
wholeheartedly do. I don't think that they're in some crisis mode where they need to dump Tannehill and bring in Aaron Rodgers because they need to win now. The team, I believe, is young enough to where they can go another 2 or 3 runs like this before they need to start replacing parts and dishing people out and stuff like that. So, I mean, if they do it, I wouldn't be surprised because it would seem like a smart move because they can just win the Super Bowl next year. It'll be they're hedging their bets, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's
Yeah.
like, do they really need to? No,
Did they really need to get Rodgers? Is that what you
no.
said?
Hmm.
Well, we'll certainly see. I mean, I think it's a kind of a toss up. I think it's interesting. But again, that's a fine line that you gotta keep in mind is do you want to bring in the big personality and possibly shake things up the wrong way?
Yep, 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 yep. All right, so Djokovic to get vaccinated after Nadal's Australian
Yeah.
Open win. How
Mhm.
does that make you feel?
It's about time. It's about time. We got one of the best players around in history now. Before Nadal just won this Australian Open a week ago, um, less than a week ago. Sorry, they were all Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, and Nadal were tied at 20 career majors. So there's a big rivalry going on between Nadal and Djokovic, and Djokovic doesn't want to fall any further behind. Now, Djokovic is younger than Nadal by at least a few years, so Djokovic will probably play longer than Nadal. But Nadal he's as gritty as it gets, and he just showed that in this Australian Open, going down in the first 2 sets to Medvedev and coming back to win it in 5 sets. It was an incredible match. So, listen, how it makes me feel is that it's about time that Djokovic complies with the rules that everybody else has to follow, and we'll see if he's ready to go for the French Open. So that's obviously what his plan is here, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nonsense. It's nonsense, right? Like you went through all of that just to end up doing what you refused to do in the first place. It's
Yeah,
nonsense. I can't. I couldn't believe it when I read it. I'm just like, why wouldn't you just do that in the first place? You knew that these people were going to keep on playing if you couldn't play. You knew that there was a risk that you might have to sit out one of these opens. And now all of a
yeah,
sudden that the reality slaps you in the face. It's like, oh shit, now I have to do something about it. Come on, man. This is one of those scenarios that I told you so. You know what I mean? Like you should have just done it from the beginning because now you have this bad reputation. You had this bad reputation before. Didn't he hit somebody with a tennis ball or something like that at
yeah,
one point? So it's like
yeah.
you already have this sort of bad reputation. Then you go out here and pull this stuff and be like flaunting around that you just don't care about the vaccine and all this, that, and the third. I mean, you just make yourself look bad. And then you turn around after reality slaps you in the face, and then you're like, I'm sorry, I'm going to get the shot now. I don't want to be left out. You know what I mean? Like, come on,
Yeah,
come on. To me, it's just pathetic. I
yeah,
I would respect him more if he would have stuck his guns and stay out of some opens and stuff like that. And really, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying I approve of what he did. I'm saying like I can respect somebody who sticks to their guns. If he's gonna be a dummy, at least be a dummy all the way through. Don't sit there and cave now. Don't sit there and cave now. But I guess he realized what's really important now, right? Those wins, the W's, and he's gonna get them.
yeah. Absolutely. It's super important to him to stay in that career Grand Slam hunt, and it's basically it's the biggest thing going on for him. And yeah, he should have done it from the beginning, or he wouldn't be behind right now. Nadal is up by one major. Nadal is very good on clay, which is the surface played at the next major, the French Open. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
All right. So, did you see the Kobe Bryant All Star Trophy design?
Yes,
What'd you think?
very cool, very cool, different. kind of different. I thought it kind of looked like the Stanley Cup, to be honest. You see that a little bit?
Yeah, I thought so too. When I first saw, it, I was like, did they? And then when I read about, all the symbolized stuff in there, the eight and the, all the all-star games and, his MVPs and everything like that. Like, I remember when Kobe Bryant, when I was a kid, Kobe Bryant was like my Michael Jordan, right? Like I
Mhm.
watched Michael Jordan, the tail end of his career. I was born in 88. So, when I started getting into basketball, Michael Jordan was there and he was my favorite player. But then Kobe Bryant came into the league and he was my Michael Jordan. He was the
Mm.
guy. I remember being a kid on the basketball court and being like, Kobe, one of the first people doing that stuff. You know what I mean? Everybody's out there doing the Jordan and all that. Kobe, I was doing it. I was doing it first, and just watching his entire career. I mean, it still saddens me to this day. Like it's still a shock to me that he's gone. You know what I mean? Like the day he retired, that was a shock to me. I was like, dang, he's done. Like I'm never gonna watch that
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant magic anymore. And then it's like to find out that he's not on earth, like he's not around anymore, that hurt a lot too, man. It still hurts. And just looking at that, it was really classy move and really classy display by the NBA and stuff like that. Like, Kobe Bryant did affect a lot of people's lives and stuff, and he changed the game. There would be a lot of players whose game would be a lot different if there was never a Kobe Bryant. You know what I mean? Like Kobe Bryant inspired a
Yeah.
lot of kids to get out there and ball and really put their heart and their soul into it and stuff like that. And so I thought it was a really classy move by the NBA and those designers and stuff like that. It was really beautifully done.
So what I'm interested in what you said is that people yelled Jordan, obviously all those years, like, cause I was born in 93 and like, I was like at the end of Jordan's career. So like people would like, cause I know Kobe, like when you're shooting into a waste paper basket, you say Kobe or something
Yeah,
like that. But
yeah.
like, yeah, before that, it was Jordan
Yeah,
who
but
had
before that,
occupied
it
that
was
role.
it was
Okay.
Jordan or it was Jordan or whoever your favorite basketball player was at that time. You know what I mean? Like Ray Allen,
Yeah.
yeah, Ray Allen or somebody like that. If people are just saying whoever it was,
Well, Ray Allen, does he have a record for 3 pointers? I mean,
he
I think
did at
it's
one point. I think Steph Curry crushed it.
this year. He did it at Madison Square Garden to boot against the Knicks.
Yeah,
Um,
he crushed it.
he crushed it. I mean, he's the 3 point king nowadays. But I just remember watching the LeBron Heat teams. Didn't they get Ray Allen? They
He was
got
out
him
there
for
for a
like
while.
one. Yeah, yeah. So it was like the year that they didn't have him, they didn't win. Then the next year in 2012, when they won, they needed that dagger, that 3 point dagger that he had to put them through. But anyways, we got off on a little tangent there.
Yeah. So Ben Simmons is not playing for Philly. Like he's 100% out. Like he's checked out. He's still working out, staying in basketball shape, hoping that he gets traded and everything like that. Philly's fined him millions of dollars. In this situation, what do you do if you are the 76ers?
It's a tough one. I was watching the game last night. They were playing, and I think it was Reggie Miller was doing the color on the broadcast, and he just basically said, the 76ers want to win a championship. You can't do it with this drama going on and him not playing. So it's either one or the other. He has to play, obviously, or you have to trade him, is what he said, and get pieces back for him. So, the question is a player like him in demand? I would say so. Like finding the right team to trade him to, finding a team that could give you back what you want. Are the Sixers willing to trade a player in his prime for draft picks? I don't think so, right? Like they want a superstar swap, probably. They want I don't those don't even happen, but like it's just that's what makes it so difficult is that it's like what are you going to do? Like you obviously want him to stay because he hopefully has good chemistry with the teammates, but if he doesn't have good chemistry and he's really bitter there, then you probably have to get rid of him and hope for the best.
Yeah, I think he's become a poison for that team at this point. Um,
Wow.
no matter what, even if the 76ers want him to come back, how do you play with somebody who's sabotaging your playoff hopes, your championship hopes by not playing? How do you trust somebody who doesn't have your back? Like he's not all in for the team. Obviously, he's not all in for the team because he's not playing. Right? Like
Yeah,
he's telling Philadelphia, I'm not going out there and playing for y'all. I'm done. I don't want to play with you guys no more. I don't want to play for you guys no more. So how
yeah,
do how even if the Philadelphia 76ers do want him to come back, how do the guys on the court to handle that? You know what I'm saying? There's got to be some guys who
uh,
are like who got some animosity because if he's not playing, somebody else could be and helping them out, helping them win some more games, helping make sure that they keep their, their playoff hopes alive, their championship hopes alive, right? Because Ben
right,
Simmons is just a wasted spot right now. He's a
right,
wasted spot on the roster. He ain't add no worth to the team, save for whatever value he holds on paper. So at the end of the day, I think it's far past time for the 76ers to move Ben Simmons. I've never been that big of a Ben Simmons fan to begin with. Okay. Like the kid is impressive. He does have a little bit of talent and a little bit of skill. But as far as I'm concerned, that jumper needs to be improved. He needs to improve his jumper that because he driving to the hole and getting to the basket and getting to the free throw line, that's all good and well. But in those close games, and they need their superstar to make that big jump shot, it's not Ben Simmons. Not right
mm,
now.
hmm. Who is it for the Sixers?
Joel Embiid, what are you talking about?
Oh, I thought he was
You
big man.
want the ball in Joel Embiid's hands no matter where he's out on the court because the man is magic. He can shoot. He can shoot. Trust me. He got a little
Okay,
bit of a jumper. And if you want him to put up point. You want the game. I want the ball in Joel Embiid's hands 9 times out of 10 in the last 2 minutes when we need major buckets because he is a sure thing in the
yeah,
paint and he got a little bit of range on him.
yeah, that's special combination. But the question is, you probably need another guy, right? I mean,
Obviously, but that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. Ben Simmons is a wasted spot. Like, even if they
he
traded
is.
him away for 2 rotation players, the 76ers would be in a better position now than they are, the better position than they are now.
Yeah, I mean, they're still hanging near the tops of the conference.
Yeah, but
But
my point is how long is that going to last? How long can they keep that depth? How long can they keep going on the back of Joel
yeah,
Embiid?
not long, probably. I mean,
Joel Embiid is a
unless,
phenomenal player. I mean, he's amazing. I love watching that guy play. I do. He's a great player. He plays with so much passion, so much fire. He's out there doing everything he can to get that team to the next level, but he can't do it by himself. And Ben Simmons should be there, right? Like Ben Simmons should be there. But the truth of the matter is Philly held on to him for far too long, for way too many years. He should have been gone, I would say 2 years ago.
mm, why is that?
He's just not there. He's not their guy. He's not who they need. And he's proved it all the way up to this point. He's proved that he's not their guy.
All right. Yeah, I mean, well, it looks like GM's got a big deal to make.
Oh yeah, buddy.
We'll
They
see
got a
what
big
happens.
decision to make. All right. So we talked about Kyrie Irving having to miss some games because they were out in the California states, but apparently the Lakers and the Kings
Okay.
let him play.
Mm-hmm.
But the Nets have been on a losing skid. They've dropped from the third seed down to the fifth or sixth seed.
Yep.
And I want to know, do you believe that there's any hope that they're going to make a deep playoff run?
Well, good question. Um, I think that there's hope. I mean, Kevin Durant gets back for the playoffs. I mean, he's still going to miss. He's going to be out until March sometime. So um, that's a chunk of the season. But then again, in basketball, there'll be another at least 2 months of the regular season, maybe month and a half, something like that. So they get him back in time. But this whole deal with Kyrie Irving, so like we were just talking about with Djokovic, is but in this case, Djokovic is going to get vaccinated, and Kyrie doesn't look like he's budging. So it's amazing to me that you could have a once in a lifetime opportunity to win an NBA championship in New York City, and you come from West Orange, New Jersey, you come from the metropolitan area, and you're not putting that first ahead of this, strict uh, anti-vaccine ideas that you have. So, I mean, it's just he, listen, if he doesn't get vaccinated, they're going to be going into the playoffs, and he's going to miss a lot of the games. He's going to miss all the home games. So, I mean, just imagine that. Like, you got one of your best players, and he's going to miss like half of your games in the playoffs. Depending on who you play against. If they play again, they're not going to play the Lakers or the Kings unless it's in the finals, and it ain't likely they're going to play either of those teams in the finals. So it's very upsetting, and I'm a Knicks fan, so I'm not like super upset about this, but I am from the standpoint as I feel bad for those Nets fans who like this is their team, like this is their chance. Like the Knicks are still rebuilding. Knicks are still developing, but this is their chance, and Kyrie's kind of ruining it. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I think, yeah, I mean, they got Durant and Harden going full throttle. They can probably win 2 series, but I don't think they're going to win past that.
Yeah, I don't think this is their year. I think Kyrie dashed that whole thing with all this drama with him not being vaccinated. I'm actually upset that they decided to let him play, because obviously the rules don't mean anything if you're not making millions of dollars. If you're unless you're making millions of dollars, you know what I mean? Like you can just dismiss the rules and go do whatever you want to do because you make millions of dollars playing playing basketball or football or whatever it is. Like the rules don't apply. You know what I'm saying? That's the message that it sends to me, is that as long as you're rich and famous and some pro athlete, the rules don't apply to you. You can get away with whatever. And that to me is not something the league should be allowing. That's something teams should not be allowing, because it's the kind of behavior that people see and take advantage of and stuff like that. Like it starts out with just this, right? But then what's next? How far are they willing to let these athletes walk all over all of these societal norms and societal rules and stuff like that before? I mean, how many times before has the NFL covered up domestic violence or dismissed it as something, you know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden Ray Rice hits his wife on tape, and now all of a sudden they're all pro domestic violence and stuff like that. But that stuff was going on for years. OJ Simpson was murdered Nicole Brown, right? Like he wasn't still playing, but they had the cops called on him a bunch of times and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure some of them was during his playing days. You know what I mean? Like I can't imagine that every single time that he beat her was only after he retired. Like, you know what I'm saying? So this stuff is not new. And it was only after the Ray Rice video came out that everybody was like, "Oh, we need to do something. We need to change the culture of the NFL." Blah 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 blah. Because we didn't know what was going on. Bullshit. You guys didn't know what was going on. You guys just didn't pay attention. You guys let it go because you guys didn't want to tarnish your image and stuff like that. And now, so like I said, how far are they willing to go with these types of things?
Yeah, I think you bring up a different angle at looking at it, as where it's not just about whether the Nets win a championship. It's about the rules, and that everybody has to follow. Like with Djokovic, he's going into a foreign country unvaccinated, and he's trying to play a tournament, and he's going to be in close contact with coaches, medical staff, and other players. Kyrie Irving, certain states have vaccination mandates for playing indoor sports. Because playing indoors is dangerous for the virus. And he's, trying to skate by that that fact that we need to try and solve the virus, not just ignore it. Not just like say, "Oh, I don't want to take the vaccine. I'm not modifying my body or anything." It doesn't modify your body. I shouldn't have said that, but like the arrogance of Kyrie Irving to sit there and just say, putting myself and my, wishy-washy views ahead of everything else, and I just want to handle it my own way, and I'm not going to follow the rules. Well, whatever happened to, there's no I in team, and frankly, I think that if you have one of those old school coaches or something like that, like a old school basketball coach, like, do you think Bobby Knight would put up with this, or you remember him? Come on.
I mean, I mean, look, you have to look at it from this, like that. That's a good aspect to look at it, but you also can look at it from the standpoint of how does that, he's not paying attention to how it's affecting his teammates either. Because according to the reports, James Harden is not happy out in Brooklyn now. He was fine all up until all of this drama started happening and everything like that, right? He was all for it until all of this started happening. And now all of a sudden he wants out. He'd welcome a trade, a change of venue and stuff like that. So it's negatively impacting his teammates as well. So that's probably going to hold them back from getting a championship, right? Like right now, James Harden's the one who's technically carrying the load because Kyrie can't play in certain places and can only play part-time. Yeah. And on top of that, it's like, how do you get it? Like when I mentioned with the Ben Simmons thing, how do you get out and play with somebody who don't have your back? If they did have your back, they'd be out there with you instead of sitting out there for their selfish motives.
Right. Oh, I mean, 100%. I mean, James Harden's getting frustrated because he's having to handle most of the load, and he doesn't want to have to do that all the time. And he's frustrated because he thought he was coming to a team that had a chance to win a championship and was going to basically play like they were going to win that game every night. And now he's the only one out there on certain nights because Durant is injured. So it's immensely frustrating for him, right? Because he's gone his whole career now, about 10 years, and he's tried and failed in the playoffs. He's been on the Houston Rockets, and it's been a one-man show where he's been the leader, and it hasn't worked. Now he comes to the Nets. They got Kevin Durant and Irving and a pretty good deep squad other than that. And now, because Kyrie Irving isn't on board with getting the vaccine, now that's thrown a wrench into everything. So I can totally see where he's coming from. I think that somebody needs to talk to him, send, really seriously, somebody who can really reach him and try to bring him to grips with this vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, there's something. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Harden is gone after this season, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, I'll say it like this: if they don't win a championship, I could see Harden not coming, but wanting to be. Well, I could see Harden wanting to be traded in the offseason.
Okay.
Not wanting to come back and play. I mean, I could easily see that simply because he's not happy there. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that he's probably friends with Kyrie, but some of that animosity's got to be aimed at Kyrie because he came out there because he bought into the whole plan and everything like that. They were supposed to win a title and everything, and now they've fallen to the 6th seed. And it's like, how much further are they going to fall? The injury bugs only get worse during the later half of the season, right? Like the longer the season goes on, the more the injury bug strikes. So what happens if Kevin Durant goes down right before the playoffs? What happens if Harden goes down right before the playoffs? Right? Like then you have to rely on Kyrie playing part-time and stuff like that. What if Kyrie goes down? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that can go wrong in that scenario because they hedged their bets on 3 guys, and now the season is just it's looking like it's circling the drain very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you bring up a good point because in last year's playoffs for the Nets, James Harden had an injury in that series against the Bucks, the hamstring injury that kept him out at least one game, and he wasn't 100%. For the last few games of the series. So, a lot of things go wrong. That's why you want everybody on board with the team's goal. And that doesn't seem to be the case with the Nets right now, Brandon.
Yeah, no, not at all. All right. So that wraps up our show for tonight. Thanks for tuning in and watching, everybody. Again, I am Brandon. This is Anthony. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Good night.